Imagine a company that barely did any business, that had almost no revenue and no real plan to make money, yet became so valuable that even Isaac Newton invested his life savings. This actually happened in 1720 England, and when it collapsed, it nearly destroyed the British Empire. Let's rewind to 1711. England had just finished years of expensive wars. The War of Spanish Succession had drained the treasury. The British government owed an enormous amount, over £10 million. To put that in perspective, that was about half of England's entire annual economy. The government was paying massive interest on these debts, money that could have been spent on the military, infrastructure, or trade. They desperately needed a solution. Enter the South Sea Company. A group of wealthy merchants proposed a deal to the government. "Let us take over your debt," they said. "We'll pay off what you owe, and in return, give us exclusive trading rights." The government loved this idea. The debt would disappear from their books, and this new company would have a monopoly on trade with South America. It seemed perfect, but there was one massive problem nobody talked about. The South Sea Company's entire business model was based on a lie. They claimed they'd make fortunes trading with Spanish colonies in South America. Gold, silver, exotic goods, riches beyond imagination. There was just one tiny detail. Spain controlled South America, and England had just been at war with Spain. The Spanish weren't exactly eager to let British merchants into their territory. In fact, Spain had granted England only one ship per year. One ship. The entire business model depended on unlimited access, but they only got one ship annually. To make it worse, when that ship finally sailed, the cargo was mostly worthless. The South Sea Company made almost no profit from actual trade. But here's the genius part: they didn't care. The company's real business wasn't trading goods. It was trading stock. They realized people would buy shares based on the fantasy of future riches. Actual profits didn't matter as long as people believed. And believed they did. By 1720, South Sea Company stock had become the hottest investment in England. The directors launched a brilliant marketing campaign. They spread rumors of infinite riches in the Americas. Tales of cities made of gold, mountains of silver. They bribed politicians and nobles to promote the stock. Even King George I became a major shareholder. If it was good enough for the king, it must be legitimate, right? The company's stock price started climbing from £128 in January 1720 to £175 in February, then £330 in March. Every week brought new highs. People who'd never invested before were buying shares. Aristocrats, merchants, servants, even maids. Everyone wanted a piece of the South Sea fortune. The company kept issuing more and more stock. They offered generous payment plans. Buy now, pay later. People could buy shares on credit, assuming prices would keep rising forever. London coffee houses became unofficial stock exchanges. Traders packed into places like Jonathan's and Garraway's, shouting prices, making deals, getting rich on paper. The atmosphere was electric, intoxicating. Isaac Newton himself invested £7,000, his entire fortune. One of the smartest men in history got caught up in the mania. He later said, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." The South Sea success inspired hundreds of copycat companies. If people would invest in a company with no business, they'd invest in anything. Entrepreneurs launched the most absurd ventures imaginable. A company for carrying on an undertaking of great advantage, but nobody to know what it is. Yes, that was a real company. It raised thousands of pounds. The founder disappeared the next day. Another company promised to extract silver from lead. One offered to trade human hair. Another claimed they'd build a wheel for perpetual motion. These were obvious scams, but people invested anyway. The bubble mentality had taken over completely. Logic, reason, basic business sense, all irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was finding someone willing to pay more tomorrow. The government tried to stop the madness. Parliament passed the Bubble Act, in June 1720. It banned unauthorized joint stock companies. The goal was to shut down the scam operations. But it had the opposite effect. Investors panicked and rushed back to the safe South Sea Company. The stock price hit its absolute peak, £1,000 per share in August, a 680% gain in just 8 months. Then reality caught up. In September 1720, some directors quietly started selling their shares. They knew the truth. The company had no real business. Word spread that the insiders were selling. If the people running the company were getting out, what did they know? Confidence cracked instantly. September saw the first price drops. Then October brought full panic. Everyone tried to sell at once, but there were no buyers at any price. The stock that had been worth £1,000 in August was worth $150 by December. An 85% collapse in 4 months. Fortunes that existed only on paper vanished overnight. Families were ruined. Estates were lost. Lives destroyed. The poet Alexander Pope lost heavily. So did Jonathan Swift, author of Gulliver's Travels. Isaac Newton lost his entire £7,000 investment. The financial devastation spread across all of England. Banks collapsed. Credit froze. The economy seized up. People literally died from shock and stress. Suicides were reported among those who had lost everything. The government faced a crisis that threatened the entire financial system. The public demanded justice. Parliament launched investigations into the South Sea Company directors. What they found was stunning corruption. Directors had bribed politicians with free shares. They'd spread false information deliberately. They'd sold their own shares while telling others to buy. Several directors were arrested and had their estates confiscated. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was sent to the Tower of London. Even some members of Parliament faced charges. The scandal reached the highest levels of British society. One man emerged as a hero from the crisis, Robert Walpole. He crafted a bailout plan that saved the financial system. The Bank of England and the East India Company absorbed South Sea Company debts. Shareholders got something, but nowhere near their peak values. It was a painful compromise that prevented total collapse. Walpole became Britain's first prime minister partly because of his handling of the crisis. The Bubble Act, ironically passed to prevent bubbles, remained law for over 100 years. It actually slowed Britain's economic development by making it hard to form legitimate companies, an unintended consequence of panic legislation. The South Sea bubble taught us critical lessons. First, it proved tulip mania wasn't a one-time fluke. Just 83 years later, England repeated the exact same pattern. Second, it showed that intelligent people aren't immune to bubbles. Isaac Newton, one of history's greatest minds, lost everything. Intelligence doesn't protect you from mass psychology. Third, insider selling is often the first sign of trouble. When the people running the company start selling, that's your signal. Fourth, government intervention during bubbles often makes things worse. The Bubble Act meant to stop the mania actually intensified it. And finally, bubbles require 2 things: easy credit and a good story. The South Sea Company had both. People could buy shares on borrowed money while dreaming of South American gold. Reality didn't matter as long as the story was compelling. From a company with no business to England's worst financial crisis, the South Sea bubble proved that the tulip pattern wasn't unique to the Dutch. It was a human pattern that transcends time and place. Greed, fear, and a dream of easy money will always create bubbles. The only things that change are the names and the technology. This is Trade Origins, showing you that financial history doesn't just repeat, it rhymes perfectly. Next time, Wall Street is born. How America created its own market from scratch in the late 1700s. Subscribe to see where the story goes next. If this made you think twice about can't-miss investments, hit that like button and subscribe to Trade Origins. We're documenting centuries of financial mistakes, so you don't have to repeat them. See you in the next one.